But I mean, the Treasury is the driver. Clearly, the FSA and moving forward, the Bank of England will set the regulatory landscape, but in conjunction with European authorities. But HMT has a big say in this, and my point is the policy you're setting, again, potentially is pointing in two different directions. Linking on to that, what concerns do you have that Basel III will put up the cost of finance for banks?
Well, again, it's back into the same area of regulation, and again, I think Basel III has developed quite a lot over the last few months. So I think the banks would say they are concerned about any change that causes a cost to them of long-term funding and investing in long-term assets.
Because if they've got to hold more capital for these long-term loans, they're going to have to put the prices up.
No, but it goes back, I'm afraid, to my prior answer that it brings in I understand the point that if holding those loans increase the cost to them, that will mean that would be a risk that they would pass on. But it brings in so many different constituent parties to whether that is the appropriate thing to do or not, that I absolutely accept the point that if there is a regime that increases the cost to them, they would attempt to pass it on, but I just don't feel well enough versed to give a view on Basel III and the implications.
But to me, you see, if we look at paragraph 27, the NAO is warning on the value for money for subsequent projects. And in its paragraph 23, which is on page 10, it's saying the usual cost advantage lay in the range of 5 to 10%, some of which, when they audited it, showed smaller savings. And yet the annual contract charges are going up by 6 to 7%. And we've touched on this tension in some of the earlier questions. But if there's regulatory hurdles in terms of the access to this market for the insurers, which is why they're losing the competition you've just referred to, and also the bank's costs through Basel III are going up, then the viability of PFI surely comes under more pressure.
Well, again, and I'll go back to Mr. Morse's comment earlier about the recommendations the NAO makes about, I think it was transfer of risk, truffer criteria. I think we welcome that, and I think as part of the review we're doing, we will certainly take those recommendations on board, and we are looking at this. But as I say, there are other areas in the market regulation, global banking regulation that may have an impact, and that would ultimately drive into the value proposition of the overall PFI evaluation, because the finance is one component of that evaluation.
And we heard with these major projects, because of the urgency and the macroeconomic climate, individual assessments were not called in because there was seen to be an overarching policy priority. But in terms of PFI projects that haven't closed as of today, will you be reassessing those?
Well, that's a continuing exercise of the Treasury, whether through the project review group or through the Treasury spending teams doing their work on the value for money of a project, and of the department doing its work on value for money, because in the end, responsibility rests with the accounting officer to satisfy himself or herself that a project is still value for money.
Sure, but Mr. Hudson, we heard in reply to Mr. Johnson's questions about the role of the Treasury as the green light body on this, and the role moving forward in terms of having some sort of central control. It just seems strange that what I'm trying to understand is what has changed. We have a clear reason why individual assessments were not done in this report, because we were told there wasn't time. There was a policy objective that overrode that need. What I'm saying is that policy urgency in terms of time still a constraint? And if so, when is it going to be lifted? Or if not, why is it that individual assessments are not being called?
Well, those deals that have closed have been through
the ones that haven't closed, I'm talking about.
Well, they will be going through a scrutiny process at the moment, which will take account of current market conditions.
And presumably some of those won't go ahead then?
Well, if they're good value for money, they will go ahead. If not, they won't. And as Charles Lloyd says, through the period that we've been talking about, some were sent back for further work.
It's just on the reports I've seen today. I mean, we take the air tanker one. There was a pressing defence need for it to go ahead, so a different valuation discount was applied. On the waste one, there was a regulatory and legal requirement, not to mention a political requirement, driving that, and therefore the value for money figures, dare I say it, surprisingly were made to fit in order for that to go ahead. what I'm saying is it's very difficult to see which PFI deals have been turned down.
What proportion are turned down and, for good, that they disappear because they're not good value for money? What proportion?
Well, I think the best evidence that I'm aware of is that of the 35 that went ahead, 6, I think, were sent back to be looked at again and were then able to renegotiate or redo the deal such that it did turn out to be one that the project review group felt able to support.
What changed on those 6? What changed?
What happened was it just went back, but it still went ahead as a PFI deal.
Some go ahead as PFI deals, some don't go ahead at all. Andrew Hudson is exactly right that of the deals that came to us, we sent 6 back for a range of reasons.
Yep.
I think it's important to remember that most of these deals come to us at a fairly late stage in their evolution. They've been thought about a lot by the authority. They put a team together, a business case, and so on. Many deals never get to that point, and we don't see the deals which don't get to us because they don't get to us because they're not value for money, because they're not affordable. So we don't have data on that set of transactions.
I mean, there are 2 other recent developments. One is in the spending review that announced that funding would not be available for certain PFI schemes, and also there is a change in the PFI credit regime, whereas now departments have to look at their spending in the round. They are not having the allocation of funding for PFI credit. So I think there have been profound changes in making sure there is a level playing field when these departments look at their particular PFI project.
I'm anxious to draw this close. Richard, then Ed wanted to quick, and then that's it.
I've got 3 quick questions.